done before this, so you missed out. But now, just a reminder for people to please submit questions on the online platform for our lovely panelists who are on stage. If you do at any point throughout it, you can even ask questions whilst they're answering questions. The next conversation is named AI, Data and Education, How to Upskill for the Future, which makes me think it's a bit like a how-to guide with some interesting tips. But I imagine there's much more to it than that. For this, I'm going to hand over to the chair of the panel, Dr. Joe Watts, founder and CEO of Edinburgh-based data solutions company Effini. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Nick. And I'm delighted to be here today and welcome everybody. So, yes, for the next hour, we're going to be talking about data and AI skills and education. And I realise that I am the hour between now and lunch, so we'll try and make it as interesting as possible for you. The reason I'm here to talk about data education and bring a panel along is because it's a subject that's really close to my heart. I'm really excited that Scotland, so far as I'm aware, is the first country in the world that has a school and college level qualification in data science, for those of you who aren't aware. And I've been heavily involved with some of the panelists here in developing some of the content for that qualification. And it's something that we're still continuing to do as we start to develop things like data lessons and supporting educators with actually how do we teach some of these things. So that's why I'm here chairing this panel with everybody today. What we have is an excellent panel of people who have opinions on this topic from at every point of the education system, from school, college, university, and in work. So I'm delighted to introduce my panelists here today. And I'm going to start by asking them all the same question, asking them to introduce themselves to you and ask them what they feel are the challenges about teaching and learning about data at the moment, and how do we upskill. So I'm going to start with Kate.
I'm Kate Farrell. I work for Edinburgh University's Data Education in Schools project. I'm the Director of Curriculum Development and Professional Learning. Before that, I've been a computing teacher for many years in Edinburgh and the Lothians. I have been working with primary and secondary and special education schools for the last few years on data education. And I think the biggest challenge we're facing isn't getting the learners engaged, it's getting the educators engaged. So we have a number of educators who are just still struggling to be on their feet because of COVID. But even before that point, we're overwhelmed with curriculum. So I think it's trying to show them that it's not teaching something in addition to the existing curriculum, but how data can supplement and just engage and liven up the existing curriculum. So we've got data throughout our existing curriculum already. So how can we teach those skills in an engaging and modern way that showcase the amazing work that's happening in Scotland?
I'm going to ask the same to Stuart.
Hi, so I'm Dr. Stuart Gray. I'm wearing two hats today. I'm the founder of Student Voice, a company focused on analysing education data, but also I'm a senior academic at University of Glasgow, teaching engineering systems, so both sides of the coin there. The short answer to the biggest challenge is the education system as a whole. My slightly longer answer is around how we talk about teaching and learning data. And I think a problem, especially at university level, is we frequently focus on the tools and go too fine-grained too soon, when we should take a step back and think about what we actually are thinking about and talking about when we're talking about teaching data. And I would quickly summarize that as three main points, where we have to look at structure of things, the logic behind things, and the relationships between things. In terms of structure, we have to look at how systems and patterns and organizations evolve and how they're looked at. In terms of logic, how we can query and interrogate those systems. And in terms of relationships, how those different systems relate to each other, and internally and externally. And this isn't new concepts. What I'm basically outlining there is historical mathematical thinking. Okay? But we've got to get away from this idea that it's a particular set of skills, and instead think about what the fundamental skills we're trying to teach to students in order to let them understand the wider scale problems and apply whatever tools are appropriate rather than whichever tools they've been taught.
Thank you, Stuart. Simon.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Simon Hewett. I am the principal of Dundee and Angus College. I'm also one of the lead principals for digital within Scotland's colleges as well. My former background was also a computing lecturer and had delivered computing science and data science as part of that as well. I think for me, one of the biggest challenges, other than the teaching and the ability to have lectures in this space, is actually just the ethical piece. Again, just touching on Stuart's point, we talk a lot about tools and methods and technologies, and actually there is a bit around the ethics, the trustworthiness. Data's all around us now. It's everywhere we go, and actually what people believe and see with fake news and everything else is a huge challenge. So it's how do we embed those softer skills? How do we ensure that young people, adult returners, question data more, understand the types of ways it can be presented and how that can ultimately lead to some challenging situations. So for me, there's a lot focused on tools, methods, but a lot needs to be more focused on the soft side.
Thank you very much. And finally, Claire.
Thank you, Jo, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Claire Gillespie. I'm Digital Economy Skills Manager at Skills Development Scotland. SDS, for anyone who doesn't know, is Scotland's National Skills and Careers Agency. So amongst other things, we've got a careers advisor in every secondary school in Scotland. We've got public access centres that individuals can pop into to get careers advice. And we also run the Foundation, Modern and Graduate Apprenticeship Programme on behalf of Scottish Government. So at the risk of conflicting with what Kate's just said around learners being engaged, and actually I think learners can be very engaged with technology and data, but I think we do have a big challenge around how we create careers awareness and how we inspire more young people, particularly girls, to think about careers in technology and careers in data and AI. I think as an industry we've done a really good job of selling it up about how much you can earn and how clever you need to be to work in these jobs, and you know, the really advanced coding skills and technology skills that you need to get these successful jobs, and that's fantastic. But the other challenge is we've maybe alienated some individuals and we've created an expectation that technology and data is only for some parts of you know, the school cohort and career changer cohort. I think we need to demystify that a lot and even think about that consistency of language, for example, and also taking people like parents with us. I think if we stopped the average parent in the street, they wouldn't understand technology careers, wouldn't understand words like data and AI. So I think it's a big job for us to do. We've done a lot of really good PR in some ways, but in other ways that's created another challenge for us, Jo.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've got a lot of things there that everybody's talked about. So where are we going to start with all of those challenges? I think I'm going to start by thinking actually, what do we mean by data skills? What does that really mean? What are the skills we all need to think, to develop at every level when we say everybody needs to improve their data skills? Simon.
Oh wow, great, broad topic that, a good one to unpack. I think as Stuart said, these are skills that have been around for a long time. You know, when you talk about collecting, analysing, measuring, interpreting, visualising, communicating data, these are all the skills that have been there for a long time. In fact, we basically do it since we were born. You know, we're constantly analysing information. My watch, for example, constantly tells me that I need to breathe. So, you know, it's something that is around and has been around for a long period of time. But the big thing is when you start to scale it and when you're really starting to put purpose behind it. And I think that's one of the key points is around purpose. And within the last panel, we heard around that sort of solutions versus opportunities. And I think there is a bit around what is the purpose of the data that we're trying to use. And how do we really start embedding that within how we're delivering data skills? And how do we ensure people are thinking about the trustworthiness, the ethical nature of it? So yeah, those skills have been around for a very long time. Jo, we've talked about them and we've measured them. They're within everything, but it's how do we now embed it and contextualize it within a number of different industries? Because one of the challenges we also see is it can be very narrow, just based on what Claire said, and very much aimed towards the tech sector, when really touches every sector, right across every industry. So, you know, as educators and as colleges and universities, how are we embedding it within all courses that we're delivering? And I think that's something that is a significant challenge, because that contextualization piece, I mean, the poll that was used in the last panel, we've seen health, agri-tech, were deemed as the two biggest areas that are deemed to really need AI and data embedded within it. So how are we actually starting to embed those types of skills within every single course that we deliver throughout all of our learning and teaching?
So can I ask a supplementary question to you? Are you doing anything in that area in Dundee and Angus to try and address that challenge?
We've done a specific pilot with SDS around embedding data skills within social sciences and how that can be used to really focus on non-traditional areas, so that we do see a lot of those skills being unpacked within non-traditional areas like like social science, and not just within technology. And that's one that has been very successful over the last few years.
So Stuart, I'm going to come to you now, because you're somebody who's teaching data not as part of a data science course. So how are you addressing that challenge and trying to engage learners across different curriculum areas?
Yeah, no, so it is a real challenge, and it's something that has to be across the board. It doesn't work particularly well as a standalone course because they're predicated on teaching these specific skills. Instead, you have to find ways to get those sort of critical thinking pieces I mentioned before around sort of structure, logic, and relationships into the curriculum across the board from top to bottom. And my background, the doctor bit, is not data focused. It's around orbital mechanics and space things, basically. And there was something that struck me early on, was that a leading academic said that to know something, you have to measure it, and to understand it, you've got to predict it. Okay, and that's coming from that side, but I think that holds up. And a lens I would suggest we can look through these things of where can we fit into other bits of the curriculum would be about what can we analyze, what can we model, and what can we predict. And this could be in terms of, okay, something moving in space. You know, you can analyze the data attached to it, you can build a model, you can predict where it's going to be. But this applies to social sciences too, and the same sort of approach, in that the model can be a mental model. Okay, you'd be thinking clearly about something, and a model being a simplification of reality that's useful, and then predicting what will happen. So that can absolutely happen in every part of the curriculum, and it all feeds in, if done correctly, to building this set of skills which lets us understand systems and data and structure, and be able to interrogate it properly and robustly and rigorously, and that where we come into the trustworthy ethical nature as well. We've got to have structures around that, and then it's got to be for a purpose. That's where the prediction bit comes in. If you're not going to use this data or a newfound knowledge and model, what are you doing with it, okay? So you've got to have that in mind from the very beginning, but I think that gives some overall structure of how it can be embedded, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Kate, I'm going to come to you next, because you said there was a challenge around actually supporting the educators here. And if we're supporting educators across the whole curriculum, how do we upskill all the educators to be able to do that? Have you any thoughts around that? I know for a fact she has quite a few.
It's what we're trying to do. So we've worked with the SQA to create this new qualification, which is the National Progression Award in Data Science. And we deliberately designed it so that it could be delivered within any subject area. We didn't want this to be a computing qualification, because we can see how it would be useful in social sciences and geography. Let's get geography teachers involved, and using geography data sets and space and satellite use data and case studies. So trying to make sure that we can embed this right across the curriculum, I think, is absolutely the answer. Where it doesn't just become this geeky coding thing. It's seen to have a practical application all the way across the curriculum. And we have to support those educators in order to be able to upskill. So part of that's providing resources. So we've been working with Effini on developing a set of resources, of lessons. So educators can start from that point and then adapt them and change them and tweak them. And we've deliberately made them open source so that people can do that. And we've been trying to do professional learning. COVID has made that a challenge, but we're looking at different ways of doing professional learning, particularly with, as well as with educators who might be teaching the upper secondary school and college qualification. But how do we support the average primary teacher in delivering data? How do we support secondary teachers across the board who are teaching that in lower secondary? So that's the challenge we've been looking at. And we've been doing that through looking at cross-curricular projects and very much looking at, well, this has to be not just learning, it's not just the equivalent of learning Excel. This has to be, how do you solve problems? How do you solve real-world problems with application across the board? And where learners have an impact, where there is actually a problem to be solved and then an impact. So for example, we've worked with Roslyn Primary School, where we supported the teacher there, who has since been doing data where the kids have gone, well, there's too much plastic in the canteen. And so they gathered all the plastic after everyone had finished, every single day for a week. They made a huge bar graph out of all the plastic objects, the cutlery and the yogurt pots and things in the gym hall, and presented that to Midlothian Council, where we've got too much plastic. And they have made a change. They have impacted a change. The council have gone, okay then, yeah, sure. And now the fruit is served in bowls instead of tubs, and they've got metal cutlery again. So I think that seeing that this can be part of a STEM project or a cross-curricular project makes it a lot more applicable to educators. They can see that this is more familiar territory rather than this big scary data thing. And seeing that this is helping learners to become activists, helping them to become critical activists who are using data for a purpose and effecting a change. So I think that's really important. And I think educators are very much getting on board. Once they see the applicability of this, once they see the impact, they're very much getting on board, which is great.
That's a fantastic example, Kate. I wish we could have more of those.
Absolutely.
So Claire, I'm going to come to you next. We've heard lots about the fact that it's not just about technical skills, but actually the skills base that we need to be effective with data is much broader. So how do you feel we can develop that wider set of skills around data to solve problems, to have an impact, to challenge, all of those things?
Okay, thank you, Jo. And maybe just to clear, I'm the non-technologist on the panel here, so I have a personal interest in those non-techie skills. So at SDS, at Skills Development Scotland, we talk about meta skills, which they've had various names over the years, social skills or softer skills. But we're very passionate about meta skills because they are, we describe them as human skills, those skills that probably can't be automated, things that are really important in a whole range of different disciplines. And we categorise them, so if you start to break them down, we've got things under self-management, for example, which is about someone having integrity and someone to be able to use their intuition in the world of work. We talk about social intelligence, which is about people's ability to communicate and storytell and collaborate. And we talk about things around innovation being a meta skill, and under that we've got things around curiosity and critical thinking. Now, given data is obviously about taking really complex data and complex information and making it much more simple. Those meta skills to me really describe a good data professional, I think. And I think it's really important that we're embedding these types of meta skills, these softer skills, into the data and AI curriculum we've got in school and colleges and universities. Because they're essential, I think, to the world of work. And it's something we're very much hearing back from employers, is that they need meta skills. They're massively important. They're everyday professional skills we need in the workplace. But we're also hearing from employers that actually that hybrid individual is really important. So technology skills and technical skills are undoubtedly important if you're a data or AI professional. But because of the rise of things like fintech, like digital health, agritech, for example, we're seeing people working in lots of different disciplines. So we're not just looking for technologists, we're looking for people who understand how to market, how to understand customers, how to business acumen. And actually employers have got a huge demand for somebody who's almost 50% a data person and 50% a business person, or 50% a marketeer, for example. And I think that's a great story, going back to the point I made around at the start around kind of careers awareness. That's a great way of encouraging more people into data and into technologies, making them realise it's not just about technology skills. And there's lots of things that employers recognise as being really valuable. So if you don't have the full technology package right now, you might have some other things which are very attractive to employers. And employers are also really willing to work with individuals who are smart and willing to learn to develop some of those tech skills. And again, from a diversity point of view, some of those softer skills are quite often stronger in females, for example, maybe even individuals who are neurodivergent as well. So it really helps us kind of make sure the workplace and data and AI is a more diverse place to be.
Okay, thank you, Claire. I've got an audience question which is related to this. So I'm going to ask you that as well, if that's okay. So the question is, which adult groups who may benefit from improving their data skills we are not yet reaching or teaching, and how do we tackle that?
So I think there's a whole range of adults out there who need data skills. One of the audiences we're looking at just now, we've got a programme called Digital Start Fund, which is targeted at individuals on low incomes, individuals who may be unemployed. And that supports those individuals to be reskilled into areas like data, not just data, into cyber and software as well, but data is part of that package. And one of the big challenges we've got there is we've got a lot of high value jobs in Scotland with great career prospects, and these are areas which are very much in growth. But we've got lots of adults, older individuals who have, maybe not got the skills just now, they've got different, experience backgrounds, and we just need to support those individuals to think about technology and data careers. They may also be coming from redundant industries, and I think COVID obviously has had a huge impact there. People have been made redundant who maybe didn't expect to be made redundant given kind of the previous economic environment. So a big focus for us just now is career changers, but those career changers are probably not thinking about data and AI. And again, back to that initial point, how do we create a real buzz around technology and data careers for individuals who are not thinking about it for them?
Yes. So Simon, do you have any thoughts from a college perspective how you're supporting adult learners?
Yeah, undoubtedly the market that Claire has just talked to plays straight to the college environment. I mean, one of the things that the college sector does really well is work closely with employers already, and I think a lot of our role is to help provide that upskilling and reskilling within existing businesses, but also, which has been touched on today already, is the number of sort of SMEs that we have, particularly within Scotland and definitely within my region of Dundee and Angus. And actually a lot of them just don't know where to start. They genuinely don't know where to start. And that's where going in and having specific discussions around what it is they're trying to achieve and what it is that they're trying to do, and focusing much more on what the potential outputs might be and how it can support, as opposed to describing a course or describing what would be delivered, I think is an approach that I know the college sector takes really well, helping people understand, well, actually, what is it that you're really trying to achieve? What is it that we can do to help? I guess the other point in that, I think, which is really important, is the variety of different provision available, because we often think very much school, college, university type approach, when there is a lot of short provision out there. There's a lot of really good materials and resources that are available, and actually the apprenticeship route, as someone that is embedded in apprenticeships within my own region, it took a number of years to get employers their head around the fact, particularly within the tech industry, that this is an option, this is a route. Because in a lot of cases, particularly tech employers, they want instant wins because they have a contract to meet, and trying that concept of growing your own can be a real challenge for them because they need to make a profit. So again, that's where colleges are working hard to try and embed foundation apprenticeships, modern apprenticeships, working hard with colleagues in universities to look at graduate apprenticeships as well. So I guess it's just that minefield of the different routes, and that's where we can play a part as a college sector, but working closely with others.
So Claire, we can't go past the topic of apprenticeships without bringing you back into the conversation. I think that's a really valid point that Simon's just made about how do we support employers or encourage employers to take on apprenticeships and nurture the talent rather than hoping for sort of fully fledged data scientists out of the box.
No, thank you, and thank you for bringing it up first, Simon. So we run the apprenticeship programme, so obviously we're a huge supporter of it. And so the experience we have with employers is actually really positive. So I think, you know, a number of years back, it was quite a hard sell, if I'm honest, of employers. Technology employers weren't thinking about apprenticeships. They thought of apprenticeships being as something for different sectors, different disciplines. But actually, we've done quite a lot of work to kind of create some ambassadors with employers who can talk about the kind of great success that they've had. A number of employers have had amazing successes, particularly with the graduate apprenticeship programme. We've got a graduate apprenticeship in data analytics, and I suppose what that gives an employer is kind of the best of both worlds. You're getting an individual who's working towards a degree level qualification, but you're getting somebody who's giving value to the business right now, and also someone who's putting into practice what they're learning on a day-to-day basis. So actually the graduate apprenticeship model in particular is not a hard sell at all to employers. And actually my experience is employers are really keen to grow their own and really keen to create entry-level opportunities. And again, one of the things we're trying to say is look internally to your own staff. If you've got individuals who have a great loyalty to the business and understand the business, then could you use apprenticeships to upskill or reskill those individuals? It doesn't always need to be a new person being brought in for technology. So yeah, we've made huge inroads, and having people, you know, the colleges and Simon talk about apprenticeships so highly as well, I think is a great benefit, Joe.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really valid point about looking internally first, because there's, I mean, some of the people we've come across, you can see how they're itching to become more competent around data, but they just don't know where to start.
Absolutely.
We've got a couple of questions here talking about teaching data skills in schools, and I'm going to hand this one to you, Kate. Okay. First of all, anyway. So we're hearing that young people need to be more confident with data, maths and analytics. Should schools do more at the expense of creativity and arts? Or is the balance about right, or the results not quite where you'd like them to be?
I don't think it is at the expense of creativity and the arts. So, for example, one of the activities we have is a live lesson that we run with primary and secondary classes on data selfies. So it's based on the work of the Dear Data book, where it's all hand-drawn data about yourself. And so we've got a unit of work on hand-drawing that data, but we also have this live lesson on tweaking some code to update it to be your own information. So primary learners are getting experience about coding, and they're getting experience about the creativity of how incredible and beautiful you can make data. We've had professional learning, and in fact we've had thousands of learners do that offline, as sort of not live as well. We've had I forgot what I was about to then say. We've had professional learning on beautiful data and data and music and sound and creativity in the arts. And I absolutely think that data is applicable across the whole curriculum. So we've come up with examples where data and dance could be done together, for example, and data and the creative arts. I can't see there being an area of the curriculum where you couldn't embed data. With fun and creativity and engagement, absolutely. And I think that's also where that communication and that storytelling comes in. You can only be active with data, be a critical activist, by actually communicating your findings. And that involves persuasion, and that involves the creativity, because you've got to be persuading other people to stop using plastic, or to stop dropping litter on the beach, or whatever learners are questioning and trying to solve the problem of. They've got to come up with a creative, interesting solution that engages other people in trying to change their behaviours or their own behaviours.
And I'd like to point out that earlier Virginia pointed out that AI is art. So Stuart, do you have any thoughts around actually how do we do that?
Yeah, so I think the previous question about sort of what you have to take away in order to give more to data is a false dichotomy. I think I see students coming in from two clear routes to university. One is the brightest students, the straight A students come to engineering, 300 of them a year, and I taught for many years an introductory class, and I spend a full calendar year, 4 hours every week with them trying to unlearn what they've learned in school, which is It's engineering, so it's problem solving, and they're like, what's the equation? What's the number? What's the answer? And it's not their fault, because they've been just indoctrinated in this whole system the whole time. And they're smart, they absolutely can like solve these abstract problems, but they've not got the practice. So I would say it's more changing the emphasis of how we teach the sort of more STEM side is where there's lots more room. You don't be taken away from the arts, because that analytical thinking, that more creative thinking, problem solving is inherently a very creative endeavor. You absolutely need that. And the other side is I look after a smaller group of students who are coming through the college route into higher education, typically without the strong maths background at A-level, and they thrive if you set them up with the right sort of context of, look, you don't have to memorize that textbook. I know you haven't done the A-level, but what the actual skills are is thinking about this, observing how other people solve the problems, communicating how you're solving the problem yourselves, and setting them up, and they succeed frequently more than the students who come into the straight A's who coast on what they've learned at A-levels, and then they hit a wall when they've got to do something creative in that sort of second year of university. Whereas if you're coming in from the ground up, building up these meta skills, then you can absolutely thrive and excel through the course of your degree.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a question here which plays to a topic that I know Kate's possibly quite passionate about, but I'm going to ask it to Simon first. Given the challenges in computer science education, is the delivery of data education under the umbrella of computer science a help or a hindrance?
Ooh, wow. Again, and I know Kate has and others has been heavily involved in conversations that have been happening nationally around this area. There is a real focus on computer science and the impact of computer science, and indeed the lack of teachers in this area as well. So I think it can only be a good thing from a point of view of it being visual and being part of. I think there's a lot broader in computer science and what needs to be addressed, and it comes back to that purpose as well and how we're actually contextualizing things. My honest opinion is, building on a point that Stuart made earlier, is when you put it as an add-on, as a bolt-on, it will always be seen as an add-on and a bolt-on. And I think that's where you can see some of the dangers that have happened in previous, and that's not just with data, that's with a whole lot of other subjects as well. For me, having a core part of every qualification, as opposed to, I know we're focusing right on higher computing science, but it needs to be a fundamental part of every qualification. Otherwise, again, it will just be seen and felt as that bolt-on.
So do you see that's a change in mindset, a change in curriculum?
I think it's a bit of everything. It's also a change in pedagogy and learning and teaching approaches. And, again, where we see, particularly within the college sector, and I'm glad that Stuart pointed that out, where we see learners thrive is actually where it is embedded within their qualifications. So within Dundee and Angus, we do data and statistics for gaming, and it's the gaming that's the hook. It's not actually the data and statistics, but they're gathering information about frames per second and all of that information that's behind, and they're making judgments on the back of that. So to me, contextualization is key.
Kate, have you any further thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very aware of the challenges in computing science, having worked with and campaigned the government for many, many years, trying to deal with the problem of a loss of computing teachers. And it's the main reason why we very carefully wrote the NPA qualification with the SQA, so that it wasn't particularly a computing qualification. And we've seen in the colleges it's being delivered as part of health and social care courses and car and automotive courses really successfully. And in schools, we're seeing schools where it's delivered by a range of teachers together, working together, so maths and computing and geography, for example, such as at Boroughmuir High School down the road. And I think that's where the successes are. If we just see it as a computing qualification, we have failed, because it will always be competing against higher computing science or cybersecurity qualifications. And there's not enough space in the curriculum, there's not enough space in the teaching workforce, but also that where's the joy and fun in that if it just stays within computing? The brilliance of data science and data literacy is when we involve all these different areas. So when we get PE teachers looking at sports science and fitness data, that's going to be fantastic. You know, can we train up a group? We've got loads of PE teachers in Scotland. Can we train up a group of them to be doing data science within sports science and data fitness, for example? Can we work with a group of geography teachers to be looking at land use data and satellite data and embedding it in that way? And I think that's when we'll be onto a winner, is when we can get to that point and work with groups of teachers like that. And it not just be seen as a computing thing. It's a literacy in regards to it being on the core curriculum of numeracy, literacy, and health and well-being. And then you've got data. That would be the ultimate
So
one.
you heard it here first. Kate wants it to be a core literacy topic, so that's our ambition.
Absolutely should be.
We'll have to revisit this one in a year's time and see how far down that road we actually are. So on a related topic, we've got a question here that says, is there anything that the panel think is special and distinctive about teaching AI on data compared to teaching it on related topics? And who would like to pick that up?
I think it's not, again, it's kind of, we're seeing educators thinking this is something scary and new, and actually when we start to talk about how data can be embedded within the curriculum, they're actually going, oh no, this is what I've been teaching all along. And we can see that data can add on an incredible layer. So the learners at Roslin, we've got a project working across hopefully all primary and secondary schools across Lothian Borders, Fife, where we're using IoT devices within the schools on a LoRaWAN network, where the learners can look at CO2 data and temperature and all sorts of data, light levels, all sorts of things, and be solving problems themselves. And we had a group of learners who realized that they could see a blip of the earthquake on the other side of the planet on their sensor in their classroom. And that then led to a conversation with an earthquake scientist in Edinburgh University, answering the questions the learners had about earthquakes and pressure waves, and they looked on Google Maps as to how long it took, because they could see the two blips of the wave, and they measured the planet on Google Maps and figured out how long it was going to take. So it's nothing that they wouldn't have been doing anyway. You know, they would be looking at maps, they would be looking at measuring data and sound waves at some point in their school career. But it's the engagement of solving a real-world problem, of looking at real-world data and having an impact of that I think then makes it come to life. So it's special because it's amazing, but it's nothing special in terms of curriculum. So
it's back to your point, maybe possibly lack of resources again to support people?
Yeah.
So we've got an interesting question here I'm going to ask Claire. Okay. So what can be done to reduce the barrier to entry, financial, foundation qualification requirements for people returning to workplace and those who've had a less conventional school experience and want to start a new career in data?
So I'm going to make a punt for apprenticeships again, in part. So graduate apprenticeships in particular, I think it is a great opportunity for somebody who has come out with transferable skills, come out of a different environment and could potentially use a graduate apprenticeship or indeed a modern apprenticeship to retrain. The value is that you are getting paid to train at the same time, so it's kind of a no-brainer in many instances. I know apprenticeship salaries will vary, and not all apprenticeship salaries will be as high in some businesses as others, and maybe not as high as what the individual has come from if they've come from an employed background previously. But I think it's a great opportunity to work towards a qualification, whether it be a college or university qualification, get experience, build your networks, get contacts, and put into practice every day what you're learning. So the apprenticeship programme, I think, is a huge area I would push in that space. But I also mentioned earlier things like the Digital Start Fund, which is there for individuals on low or no incomes. And again, that fund, that provides somebody with access to a range of different training opportunities across Scotland. Some of them are online, delivered, some of the colleges, for example, deliver people like Code Clan. So a real link in with these courses too back into industry. and relatively short courses. I think the reality is that all short courses will lead to a career in data or technology, and I think we need to be realistic about managing people's expectations. That somebody who comes with very little or no experience probably can't just do a 10-week course and go into a really high-earning, sophisticated technology job. But there are opportunities to move into employment in kind of quasi-tech jobs, so where you're doing a bit of data, but maybe in a slightly different capacity. And there's a lot of programs offered. The college also offer a lot of reskilling programs and short on-learning programs. The other thing is online learning. So we've got a website called My World of Work, and on My World of Work, there's information there about accessing things like Future Learn and Open University courses. Some of them are free of charge. Also LinkedIn learning. Again, maybe people need more than that to make a career change, but I think when you start to add a lot of these things together, they can certainly help people on that career journey. So a range of things out there, but I also appreciate it's a real challenge. Not everyone can give up 2, 3, 4 years of their life to go to university and get a degree qualification if that's what employers are looking for, Joe.
Simon.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to build on some of those points. I think there is most definitely a wider range of opportunities now than what there's ever been. Just touching on some of the points that Claire made, but also the fact that there's the college sector's worked hard with the National Transition Training Fund. There's been a significant amount of short courses that have been put together, and I think Claire's spot on. A short course isn't going to get you straight into the job that you want, but it certainly starts the whetting the appetite. It starts helping the understanding, and it also automatically has a step to where I go next, I think, is a key point as well. And there is a perception that, it's back to the point of the questions that we had earlier about it being something grand, new and sexy, when actually, it's been around for a long time. So I think we need to also break that perception, and some of those short courses allow that perception to be broken. It allows people to say, oh, is that it? In a sense, not is that it, because there's a lot. But as in, it's not something abstract that's out there that is new and wonderful. So to me, there is a wide range of courses that are out there. I guess one of the challenges is the minefield of the number of different courses and options and routes available, and how do you demystify that? And Claire touched on in her earlier answer about how do we properly have good careers advice and guidance, not just for young people in schools, but also for people that want to retrain and upskill and reskill. So that's one that we have to collectively work on.
I've got a really interesting question here, which I'm going to open to all of you, because I think this is really interesting. How can industry bodies get involved with strategy, delivery, and support learning? Slightly changed direction here, but I think it's important to engage industry in some of these challenges. And so actually, what do you think, how do you think we can go about that?
I'll go first. So I'm part of the sectors and skills planning team, so my kind of day job is very much engaging with industry. So my overarching aim is to work strategically with industry across Scotland, digital economy industry, so not just the tech sector, and take that insight and feed it back into the education system. And I suppose that's partly how we develop new qualifications. I'm not saying I'm responsible for all these developments, but industry have fed that these are things that are of interest to them, and a lot of industry have been involved in some of those development processes. Our particular industry partner, we have a number, but one in particular that Scotland is, the trade body for technology companies, and we work very, very closely with them in their membership. And they're involved in one of our groups called our Digital Economy Skills Group, which is a strategic industry group. And that group consists of Simon, actually.
Not just me.
No, not just Simon, no. Simon is a representative of the college. We've got Scottish Government on that group. Miss Kate Forbes, the Minister, co-chairs it twice a year. We've got kind of half employers and half public sector agencies. And that's an amazing forum for really challenging government and challenging the public sector agencies to make sure we're stepping up and making changes in the education system. And underneath that, we've got a whole range of different work streams and groups and meetings, and I know not everyone has time to participate in these things, but there's lots of opportunity for employers to engage. And a lot of the projects we deliver are hugely dependent upon employers. We've got something called Technology Experts into Schools, and that's where we take employers and put them in the school environment. We support them, first of all, but they work with teachers, so the employer and the teachers co-delivering something in the classroom for young people to inspire that young person, also to support the teacher. So huge opportunities, I think, to strategically influence policy, but also kind of get your hands dirty and do things with us as well. Joe?
Anybody else want to add to that?
I've got a little bit of context from higher education maybe, in that we spend a lot of time talking with industry, industrial advisory boards, to work out if what we're actually giving these students is useful. And the focus, and we're very guilty of this in the sector, is, okay, it's the more technical stuff, that's what we're going to concentrate on. But we ask every time, what are the main things employers are looking for? And it's always meta skills, like problem solving comes right up there. And that's what I put these sort of skills under, is broader problem solving, also things like communication, self-reflection. And that's before any technical content. And we're coming from sort of aerospace and mechanical engineering, so you'd think it would be the maths, but it's not. Because what we've got to remember is that when we're teaching in any area, but particularly universities, these students are going to go on to have careers for the next 40, 50 years. And they won't be using the tools or the techniques we're teaching them now. So it's just basically pointless. You want to give them the ability to learn new skills. And I think that's why we've got to be very careful as a higher education sector to be flexible and not get bogged down in teaching 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago, the concepts and tools, and instead just give them the ability, give our students the ability to go and tackle these new problems we can't even envisage yet.
Simon, do you want, Kate, Simon?
Yeah, I'll come in as well. Again, a real challenge, and I think actually something that's happening really well already. There's a lot of different industry boards set up. You know, I'm myself on the Digital Economy Skills Group. I'm also on the Scotland IS Skills Advisory Board, as well as the Data Lab Skills Advisory Board. But I think industry is front and centre on all of that in a sense. But I guess my point is everything that we've said, but it also works both ways, because I think there's an important element of industry understanding education, because I think we talk a lot about industry impacting our delivery and what we do, but there's an element of us also educating industry about the pathways, the routes, the options, actually some of the minefields of education as well. And sometimes what you can get within specific industry advisory boards are very niche and very focused, and it's a problem that particular industry or that particular employer is facing, which can then skew, in a sense, some of the work that goes on. So that's where that two-way thing is actually really important, that there's the support, but there's also the challenge as well.
I think that's a really valid point, industry understanding education. I mean, it's, like I said at the beginning, you know, this is a topic really close to my heart, but I've had to learn about the sort of education industry coming into it from an industry perspective. Kate, what do you think we can do there?
I think we can work hand in hand. We'd love to be working with more employers and industry. We'd like to be representing the huge range of opportunities and the ways data is used within schools. So, you know, all the incredible, exciting things. I had no idea as a teacher, I had no idea was happening in Scotland. That data is being used for solving problems within our country. You know, can we get that knowledge, capture that knowledge, whether it's through little videos or whatever, and use that for education, for letting teachers show to learners. But we've also worked with industry on providing little activities. So we're building a sort of core set of learning for the MPA qualification. But, you know, we want activities on top of that so learners can practice their skills. So, for example, we worked with City Fibre, where they provided a data set on which postcodes they hadn't provided, that were still to be provided with internet, fast fibre internet in Scotland. And so the learners had the data science task of figuring out, well, what would be your strategy? There's no fixed answer, there's no right answer for this, but what would be your strategy for that town there? How, you know, would you go for the neighbourhoods who don't have any very good internet at the moment, or do you want to get the ones who are going to pay more for the fast internet? What's your strategy going to be? And so presenting a real world data set, a real world case study, this is exactly what this company are trying to do, the problem they're trying to solve, and allowing the learners to have a go at solving it. So we'd love to work with more companies on providing those sorts of activities with school learners. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And we can, if anybody wants to know about any of these resources that we've been talking about, come and speak to us at the end, because we can give you links to some of these if actually they would be of use to you to use. I've got a question that's got a couple of likes here. So it's a general question. What is one data skill the panelists wish they had, wish they could improve on? There's a personal question here. I'm going to start with you, Stuart.
Thank you, because I obviously looked like I was ready to answer. There's too many, to be honest. So, again, my background was very technical, but engineering side and coming to data. I had the misfortune of doing a autonomy-focused PhD because it's before machine learning was a thing. So I had to learn a lot, and I think it's the skill I would like would be, again, it's talking about being able to pick up some of these new techniques. So for me, because I'm a technical person, I want to be able to apply my previous knowledge, say mathematical knowledge, to learning new types of AI and machine learning. And it's being better at that, transferring knowledge from one domain to another, because none of us, when this data revolution happened, there weren't just people waiting there who were already doing it. It's the people who swarmed in, whether engineers, physicists, mathematicians. So it's applying expertise from one area to another, and that's something I've got to do a lot of, and I'd like to get better at it all the time.
Okay. Claire, any thoughts?
As a non-tech person, arguably I have no data skills potentially, however.
I disagree with that. I think this is exactly the problem. You're classifying yourself.
Indeed, I'm reinforcing my own stereotype here. So I think, so this one skill I think is amazing is that storytelling skill, and hopefully I'm a good communicator, but I think you can see people, and I can see it in my organisation, and people who really have amazing storytelling skills. They can take a really complex problem or a complex description, and they can, really knit an amazing story around that and really engage individuals. And I think that's a great skill in so many different environments. I think it's a great skill for our educators to have. And I think when you see a really sophisticated, advanced educator, a teacher, a college or university lecturer in front of a classroom of individuals who can really weave those individuals into that story and really inspire them, then I think that's an amazing skill to have. And from my own point of view, I hopefully have good communication skills. Maybe you'll decide after today whether I do or otherwise, but I think that's something I could probably enhance. I suppose it's partly kind of influencing skill there as well. Maybe also my just understanding of data skills, since I started this answer with I have none.
Kate?
I suppose my AI degree dates back from the 90s, and AI has changed significantly in that time. I keep seeing amazing things happening where people put in film scripts into machine learning and produce a film script, or paintings or pictures or poems. I'd love to be able to do that, because I think it would produce some really cool examples for learners. Yeah.
I'm going to jump on Claire's bandwagon. I think I get very excited about data, right? I think when I see it, because it's something that I'm passionate about, and it's something that I can see and understand that world, and I can kind of see the 2 or 3 steps ahead. I'm conscious that others can't, and what you've dangers of at times is not taking people with you and then effectively just blinding them with numbers. And so to me, that sort of storytelling piece, the communication of it, the visualization of it, I think that is something that I've learned the hard way, and I know my head of ICT here regularly rolls his eyes when I start going off on one. So I think it is really important that we do have that skill set of storytelling, and that's one that I'm constantly trying to improve.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to do one more question, and then I think we'll try and wrap up for lunch. So the final question, which is a quite controversial one, I think, is actually around how do we battle education inflation, where more undergraduates are going on to MSc programs because employers are expecting it. Would anybody like to pick that one up?
I'll start briefly. So I think, and again, it's part of things we try to do at SDS, is influence employers to actually think more broad in terms of that pipeline and really think about the words they're using to describe the job and the recruitment process they're going through and the skills they actually need. I think it's very easy for an employer to think they need a master's qualification, but actually when you start to unpick that, they absolutely don't. And the concern we have from a diversity point of view is you're quite quickly maybe excluding some females, for example, or individuals who are neurodivergent, or individuals from different backgrounds who just could not attain that master's qualification for a whole reason of maybe academic or personal or economic circumstances. So I think employers have to be encouraged to think about the job, the skills and what they actually need, and not default to kind of the easiest qualification that maybe they understand, or maybe what they're trying to do is actually make the recruitment process simpler, I suppose, for them by minimising the number of applicants. So employers are a big piece of the puzzle here, I think, Jo.
I think we're hearing a big theme about employers getting involved in all of this.
Absolutely.
Yes, and looking internally, supporting internally. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. I absolutely agree in that a lot of employers maybe are just saying, okay, we need a master's in this, and not really thinking about it. But on the other side, as we are progressing as a society in solving some of these problems, the technical bars needed to make a significant contribution do get higher. And we will inevitably in this sector have a higher proportion of master's level students, PhD students coming through. So I think the solution there isn't to necessarily say, okay, we don't need MScs or PhDs. It's to build those pathways into it. So get people from all backgrounds into college, into universities, and just start them on that process. Because I think there is a requirement for a certain level of technical qualification for at least some of those very technical jobs. I think we've got to think early on in the funnel there to solve that.
Thank you. Any thoughts? Any further thoughts, or shall we wrap up?
I think also educational inflation doesn't have to just be up to MSc level. We and particularly in schools, we go with this assumption that learners will go on to university. And I think we need to start helping learners realise that there are a huge range of different course options and different pathways that you could be taking. And it doesn't have to, and I work for a university, I maybe should be thinking about what I say. But I think we've been working so successfully with colleges, and it's really opened my eyes to the other pathways that are available. I think we need to help people see that.
Simon, do you want to respond?
That was, it was spot on there. But again, to me, it's just partnership. You know, I've said it a few times throughout this, and that's partners between school, colleges, universities, between industry. Partnership's key.
Excellent. So thank you very much to all my fantastic panellists. We have covered everything I hoped you would cover today and more. So that was brilliant. If I've got a few key takeaways, if you want to get involved, it's networking, it's partnerships, just get involved. If you want to help develop resources, absolutely. Look internally to help support upskill. Think about apprenticeships. Think about opportunities to ask data questions wherever you are. I think that's what we said. And enjoy your lunch. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jo. Excellently chaired. Thank you very much, panellists. Yes, it is lunchtime. Please make your way upstairs where lunch is served. And there's also a demo happening in the ozone from the new reel. So please check that out, as well as the National Robotarium guys that are there as well. Enjoy, and see you all at 1:30.